space in the back. It's got a boot big enough for a couple of bags and a dead body. My very first proper performance car of 2020. 2020 has been a bit of to be honest, but it's good to be behind the wheel of a proper performance car. This is the Audi S6. It's actually fabulous. I should just end the review there going like, excellent car, buy one if you have the money, and let's call it a day. First off, it's a gorgeous looking car. It looks really good. It's like, this one's black. I had a white A6 that I tested a little while back, a couple of videos back. Really beautiful looking car, but I think in black it just looks a little bit more angry. And obviously this is a proper S car, so it's got a couple of bits and pieces on it that are specific to the S6, and like you can't even get it on like the S line stuff. So it looks the business. This is proper. But more importantly, what I really want to get into is like what's actually going on underneath the hood. I mean, you're buying a performance car, and there's some stuff happening in the engine here that I think is quite significant. Before we get there though, let's cover the interior. So if you've watched any of my previous reviews of the Q8, of the A7, of the A6, the interior here is kind of the same. Right, I mean, like there are differences, but it's got the same MMI interface, which is like massive, and you can move icons around, CarPlay, Android Auto, it's all there. The aircon controls, all this really cool screen here. It's got the same haptic stuff. It's got this awesome gear lever. It's all the same. It's got the virtual cockpit over here. It's got the S-Line steering wheel. All this stuff is pretty much the same throughout sort of the A6, A7, Q8, and I imagine Q7 range as well. So we're not going to go into that too much because it's not why you're here. You're here to hear about this performance engine. It's fantastic is the only way that I can actually express this car. It is absolutely awesome. It's got the same 3-liter V6 engine that they put in the RS4 and the RS5. It's turbocharged, but they did something funky with this. So it produces 331 kilowatts. What makes this car really special is the way that they use an electronically charged turbo. So it's called a mild hybrid, but basically they take like a really big battery, 48 volt battery, and they shove it in the engine, and they get the battery to spin up the turbo before the engine begins spinning. So what you end up getting is a very linear curve. Linear curve, yeah. Well done, Justa. You get a very flat sort of linear rise in power. You don't have kind of wait for it, and here's the turbo. This is not your grandpa's S6. This is proper. When you step on the gas, stuff happens like right away. Like you just reach peak power quicker. So off the mark, this car's around 5 seconds to 100, which is impressive for the size that it is. Currently in comfort mode because, as you can probably see, I'm driving through traffic. And this is where it's got an air suspension in it. And this is where the air suspension is just ace in this car. Fuel economy, about that. They gave me a performance car and they said, here, drive this for a few days. And so I put it in sport mode and drove it for a few days. 700 kilometers in, I admit I have had to replenish the fuel tank. But over the distance, I'm averaging 14 liters per 100, which is not great. But it's been worth every cent of fuel that I've put in this car. It has been an absolutely fantastic drive. But overall, it's an incredibly comfortable car to have to drive normally in. And that's often the thing with like proper performance cars is they're so geared towards being a performance car. They're quite frankly just a nightmare to drive every day, to drive around town. But the thing is, like, as civilized as this car is, there's this drive select button here. You can press drive select. I'm going to go from comfort to auto to dynamic. Immediately there's a change in the noise, the suspension stiffens up, the throttle's more responsive. Holy cow! Okay, there are actually speed limits on this road. We shall wait just a little bit. It turns into like a completely different animal. It's just suddenly you have this instantaneous power, and that power delivery is so smooth right from the bottom up. Sounds pretty good too. In sport mode you can definitely hear it. I think some of it is piped into the cabin, but for the most part it sounds really good when you it sounds really good when you just like step on it a little bit. So one of the things, talking about the mild hybrid, is you can actually hear it. So when the car's parked and the bonnet is open and you rev it, there's like a whistly sound just before the engine starts revving. Audi said this happens in like 200 or 250 milliseconds, so like faster than you can blink. So essentially, the minute you go onto the accelerator, it spins that turbo up. Like that just thing turns on just like this. So you have the turbo pushing cold air into the engine immediately. And even in dynamic mode, the air suspension's quite pliable. It helps with cornering. So when you stick it into a corner, because it's an air suspension, it'll actually prop up the side of the car that is taking all the load. So it actually stiffens that suspension even more because you're loading it. So you have far less body roll in corners when you're going rapidly. But on the open road like this, you're not kind of bumping along the teeth chattering. But that's it from me. I'm going to drive my S6 for the last time and take it back to Audi and thank them profusely for letting me have a couple of days of amazing